Hello and welcome to today's webcast, Personalized Policy, How Smart Digital Documents Are Revolutionizing Insurance Communications, broadcast by Insurance Innovation Reporter and sponsored by ExpertDoc. I'm Anthony O'Donnell, Executive Editor of Insurance Innovation Reporter, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to be with us. We have what I think is a very exciting topic and three excellent presenters today, but before introducing them, I'd like to review how the event will proceed. As always, this event is designed to be interactive, and we hope you'll participate. After introductions and a few words about the topic, we'll have three presentations, each followed by some discussion. We'll have a more extended Q&A period at the end of the event, but we encourage you to ask your questions at any time. You can submit those questions by typing them into the questions box, which you can access by clicking the Q&A tab in the bar at the bottom of the control panel. We'll do our best to address all your questions at each of the breaks, depending on when your questions arrive. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our three speakers today. Our first speaker is Mark Brading, a partner with research and advisory firm SMA. Mark is known for his insights about the potential of innovative technology for shaping the future of the insurance industry. He leads SMA's research program and has overseen the publication of over 100 research reports. He is also in demand as an advisor of industry participants and has also directed many custom research projects for insurer and technology company clients. Mark is a thought leader in the areas of customer experience, emerging technology, insurtech, and digital strategies. And today, Mark will give us kind of an overview or review of the state of customer experience in the insurance industry today. Our second speaker will be William Pitt, Chief Marketing Officer of Beazley since 2007. Beazley is a specialist Lloyd's insurer with an extensive presence in the United States. The firm has been a pioneer in improving the insurance customer experience, offering what Beazley calls beautifully designed insurance, which combines clear coverage, robust financial protection, and exceptional risk management and claims services. So William will be presenting a case study that exemplifies that beautifully designed insurance and that I think represents an important departure from the historic way insurers have dealt with policy language. Our third speaker today will be David Squibb, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for Expertdoc. David leads a team of top sales and marketing professionals who help insurance carriers apply document and customer communication technology to leverage client data to efficiently communicate with customers and drive loyalty and growth. And now I'd like to make a few comments about today's topic. The great buzz in the insurance industry today is about insurtech and insurers finally getting innovative. There's plenty to be said in favor of that viewpoint. The insurtech ecosystem is, without a doubt, a great way for insurers to outsource a significant portion of their innovation efforts and make much faster progress on what they need to get done. And what they need to get done, or at least what they need to get done first, is to achieve a customer experience that compares with what consumers experience elsewhere. Insurtech is certainly helping on this front, but insurers and their software vendor partners have been making important advances since e-commerce became a thing. The bigger challenge for insurers isn't the immediate functional aspect of customer experience, but rather that of reorientation from policy to customer orientation, and that's something the industry has been working on since at least the early 2000s. What's exciting about now, and specifically about the case study and related topics we'll be discussing today, is that we're finally nearing that destination. Even as insurers and their vendor partners were creating far more efficient and aesthetically pleasing interfaces and processes, insurers continued to perform very poorly at various kinds of customer communication. Policy and coverage language is one of the best examples of this, which makes our case study today so apposite. Partly out of regulatory compliance requirements, partly out of policy orientation, partly out of an aloofness associated with the esoteric aspects of the business, insurers have not been good at communicating what is and is not covered by their policy. Now, this is a barrier to customer intimacy. It's a wall that seems designed to distance the company from the customer and put the customer as layperson at a disadvantage. It becomes an issue of trust as customers are confused about whether they're covered or not and feel they've been bamboozled when their insurer denies or seems to shortchange them on their claim. It is, in fact, one of the greatest sources of the industry's poor reputation with consumers. It's also a barrier against effective sales and cross-selling. How are insurers supposed to effectively communicate how they can help their clients cover their exposures in the most economical way if it's not clear what is and is not covered? I think clarifying this issue presents a huge opportunity for insurers in the near term, and it will become essential as insurance applications of the Internet of Things evolve, and insurers increasingly go beyond their traditional indemnity product and provide more risk mitigation and loss control services, including to personal lines customers. As I said, policy language is one of the best examples of how insurers can starkly improve their customer relationships. But during our discussion, we'll be discussing how the relevant approaches and technologies apply to other parts of the insurance value chain as well. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Brading of SMA.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, there is no question that this long-discussed need for insurance to be customer-centric is now occurring in a pretty big way. As you mentioned, Anthony, the transition or the evolution from policy-centric orientation to a customer-centric orientation, it's been underway for some time. In fact, I can remember being involved in a very big customer-centric strategy for an insurer in 1991. But it's just that the last couple of years or so, there's a lot of investment and energy and real attention at the senior executive level. In fact, it's really has become very strategic for almost every insurer. And the documents and the correspondence and the other customer communications that agents and policyholders receive is a vital component of that customer experience picture. In a lot of ways, it's where the rubber meets the road. And I think that insurers have an opportunity to create a great impression and cement loyalty or not with the way that those documents come across to them. And I just have to say I absolutely love what Beazley and ExpertDoc have done with smart digital documents. And there's just so much opportunity in this space. It's pretty exciting, I think, for the industry. Now, every year, SMA tracks the strategic initiatives of insurers. What are those big enterprise-wide initiatives that have C-level attention that are helping to transform the company? And you can see how over the past few years, the percentage of insurers with a major strategic initiative in some of these key areas has increased, and in some cases quite dramatically. And you note that the top strategic initiative in 2018 is improving the customer experience, the top orange line there. Virtually every insurer has some major initiative underway there. But when I look at the others, like core modernization and data and analytics, digital strategies, innovation, for all of these, over 90% of insurers have that as a part of their business strategy. And the focus on emerging tech like artificial intelligence and InsurTech is also increasing dramatically, as you can see here. What I find interesting when you think about it, every one of those has implications for customer documents. We all know about the various kinds of documents, statements, and correspondence and what they look like today. I've just a few examples there over on the right. And in most cases, they've looked like this for ages. We haven't made major progress in terms of rethinking the customer document, like the industry is now rethinking other parts of the business. So it's a great opportunity, I think. I think it's a great opportunity because, although today we're seeing an example of policy documents, there is such a wide range of documents and correspondence and statements that goes out to prospects, policyholders, producers, that the opportunity is practically unbounded here. If you look at this slide, and I apologize if this is a little bit small, but if you look at the top, all of the various kinds of outbound documents that may be going out, from different parts of the organization along the value chain. what you see there, is a pretty wide variety. And by the way, not all of those are subject to regulatory approval. Some of them certainly are, but virtually all of these would benefit from cleaner, simpler language, a fresh visual look, and creating the communications via an approach that thinks about the outside-in view, looks at it from the viewpoint of the recipient first, rather than the inside-out view, what the insurance company is thinking about in terms of what they need to communicate out to those different parties. Even the inbound documents as well at the bottom, those are often what comes in from customers or agents. They're often driven by forms or templates that are provided by the insurer that are then filled in. And suffice it to say that, one of the most important ways, I think, to truly impact the customer experience in a very positive way is to focus on these customer documents and making them relevant and understandable, and really bringing them up to par with what customers expect in this digital age, the way they're being communicated to and with from other industries. Now, my final comments are around artificial intelligence, because I believe that AI will be instrumental in the next generation of smart documents. This SMA research here, which was for personal lines and commercial lines, shows that there are many different technologies in the AI family. The right slide here. There's many different technologies in the AI family that insurers believe have potential for the industry. And in fact, there's a lot of interesting activity underway. For smart digital documents, I think text mining, chatbots, robotic process automation, machine learning, and others, natural language processing, they all can and will play a role in future documents, helping us to take document interactivity to the next level. So I was just trying to set the stage a little bit for what I see happening in the industry. It's an exciting time. There's a lot of interesting things that are underway relative to customer documents and communications and customer experience overall. But I think that we have a lot of runway ahead of us, lots of potential to continue to improve.
Well, thank you, Mark. I couldn't agree more. I wanted to maybe take a negative contrasting approach to what you've just said and see if I can get you to talk a little bit about what are some of the persistent deficiencies in insurance communications. As we're discussing the potential, what are some ways that insurers are not doing so well and that are causing them trouble?
You mean aside from the fact that they're often not timely, they're not personalized, they're hard to read, and sometimes inaccurate?
Apart from that, things are great.
Yeah, apart from that, things are great. But no, I mean, I think we would all agree that the many documents, even simple letters sometimes for, let's say, for a claim status or something like that, or an underwriting letter explaining why the submission was rejected, they can be obtuse, and they're not very visually appealing. And despite our best efforts to blend in variable data and to try to personalize somewhat, there are mistakes. It's not really very personalized, other than the dear policyholder kinds of things. And I don't mean to cast in the entire industry with the same brush. I mean, I think there's certainly companies that are doing a good job at these things, but if you look at it overall, I think there's just a great deal of room for improvement in the way that we communicate.
Yeah, well, one of the points that I tried to raise at the beginning was that we have seen a tremendous amount of improvement, but that much of it seems to be, there's been great efficiency gain, and there's also been a tremendous improvement in the aesthetic quality of the various interfaces that insurers offer to their customers. And I wanted your take on the factor of what's being held back by continuing to have a policy orientation. I think some of what you just said right now implies both a cultural and a technology dimension to that.
Well, for one thing, when you have a policy-centric organization and orientation, it probably means that you don't really have a full understanding of that customer that you're communicating with. You don't have the context around the relationship with that customer who may have multiple policies or who may have a long-term relationship or may have other extenuating factors, even understanding who the agent is sometimes. So that's, I think, the policy-centric orientation which has been historical and is the way that the organizations have grown up and evolved, and it fits the regulatory model. It doesn't really fit today's world of understanding the customer and trying to personalize the way you're interacting with them.
Now, what do you see as the potential for improving the overall customer relationship, right? Not just the immediate customer experience, but the customer relationship through an experience that's improved in the ways that you're advocating?
Well, I think
for example, I mentioned the potential impact on reputation. Can we even get that far with these kinds of improvements?
I mean, I think that the brand image, the reputation of individual companies and the industry, that will take time, and this is only one component of that, but certainly an important component. To me, the more important result is retention, because if you can create a positive impression with that individual customer, whether it's an individual or business, you're going to raise your chances of them continuing to do business with you. So to me, that's and there's some very strong metrics around what that means for financial results.
Right. Yes, I mean that in itself will be important, and I think maybe in the longer term there are these larger changes that might affect the way insurers are perceived generally by consumers. But we've been talking about these what you might call internally caused constraints. We have a question from an audience member about externally imposed constraints, and the question is that a recent comment noted the policy wordings are largely driven by court decisions. Is this a real barrier to understandable wordings? Is it surmountable? Now, this is a great question in light of Williams' case study to follow, but I guess the broader point is about the constraint of regulation. What's your take on that, Mark?
Yeah, I would say first off, as I mentioned earlier, there are many documents in customer communications that are not subject to regulation at all, so it does not apply there. But secondly, for the more complex documents like policies, summaries or abstracts can be created, and there's a lot of freedom in how that can be done, as long as the full regulated document is easily available to the customer. And then I would say finally, we observe that regulators are increasingly focusing on how technology can help customers. They're generally becoming more positive and more proactive regarding the use of technology. It certainly varies by regulator, but there's definitely a trend to encourage the industry to be innovative and to try to adopt some of these new kinds of techniques. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I won't say that, there's no snags or no barriers there at all. There certainly are, but I think we're headed in a good direction.
Anthony, can I chip in with a thought on specifically on the sort of case law thing? I mean, we looked at this quite closely at Beazley, and there is a bit of a kind of sort of you find a little bit of a sort of knee-jerk reaction from some people that no, we can't do anything to the wording because it's all been tested in the courts. And when you actually look at a lot of the language in policies, it hasn't been tested in the courts at all. There are certain clauses that have been frequently tested in the courts, but an awful lot of it hasn't, and it can be a kind of an excuse to do nothing to actually simplify the language of policies. That no, it's been kind of blessed by the courts, and we have to stick with the wordings that we've always had. The other point I would make, which I'll be able to show when we go on to the demo, is that there are things that you can do that have absolutely no bearing upon that risk. They don't aggravate that risk at all, and that's really going into the sort of technological domain and the way in which you actually present the wordings, and particularly if you can personalize them, which is what we've done. You're not effectively in any sense at all changing the legal meaning of the words. You're just making it much easier to understand.
Well, with that, William, I'd like to invite you to start your part of the presentation, and maybe with an answer to the question of what business challenge drove the need to seek the solution you'll be discussing, and how you came to select ExpertDoc as your partner.
Sure, happy to do that. I'm not 100% sure, Anthony, that my computer is actually scrolling through the slides. So I'm on the Q&A slide now, but if I move forward to the Beazley, the case for policy digitization, is everybody on the same? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, it's up in my browser.
It is. Good, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been quite a long journey already at Beazley, and the way I would sort of summarize it is to say that it can be quite complicated to be simple. And I feel strongly, and a lot of us at Beazley feel strongly, that we've kind of foisted the complexity, the internal complexity of our business on our clients for much too long. And so what we've really began a couple of years ago at Beazley was a concerted effort to take that complexity on ourselves, but present the clients with something that was much simpler and easier to understand. And we did a lot of research in this space in areas that have already come up in the on the webinar: questions of trust, questions of how people perceive the small print in policies and how that undermines trust. And we thought that there was a terrific opportunity, particularly given that we'd created this tagline for Beazley, beautifully designed insurance, which we thought was a fair description of the way in which we put our products together. But the bit that we really needed to address was the way in which those products came across to our clients in terms of the wordings and other documentation around those products. So we worked quite hard on that, and what we concluded was that digitization and personalization of products could actually move you a long way along the path of offering something much simpler and more attractive to your clients. And we were very happy to partner and find, I think, an excellent partner in ExpertDoc to actually bring that about. There are really two dimensions to it. There's the external dimension of how does it work for your clients and are they getting a better experience, but there is an important internal dimension as well. How does it work for your underwriters and the people who work at Beazley in terms of the ease of actually producing these policies? And we wanted to tick both of those boxes, and ExpertDoc has helped us do that. So what I'll do, I'd just like to go into the sort of theory of the case, and what we're seeking to do through digitization and personalization of policies is to improve the reader journey. So what you have at the moment is the structure of a typical insurance policy here. You've got a deck page, you've got the policy itself, which has got a definition section within it, and then you've got a bunch of endorsements that you tack on at the end, which will modify language that was in the base policy. And so as a reader, you have a fairly tough time following the meaning of the policy. You really have to kind of piece it together, and you're continually flicking from the policy itself back to the deck page, flicking to the definition section, checking that what you're reading hasn't been superseded by an endorsement, and it's a pretty horrendous task. And what we set ourselves the goal of achieving was to create a document that you could read straight through from beginning to end in the way in which you would normally expect to be able to read a document. So that's what we think we are able to do with the digital policy. And just to show what we've been able to achieve with WeatherGuard, the first policy that we've digitized in this way. It is a very short policy in the first place, I should say. It's a form of coverage for event organizers who wish to protect their business against unforeseen adverse weather at outdoor events. You can also insure weather-related promotions. If you're a retailer or somebody else who wants to have a promotion hinging around the weather, you can also use the policy for that purpose. And the original wording of the policy ran to 2,275 words. There is no single figure for the length of the new policy because each policy is personalized to the requirements of each individual policyholder. But a fairly representative one, which I show here, goes down to 870 words, which you can actually see on the screen. And then there are another 263 words, which are the definitions, which only appear when you click on them. So they appear to have shortened the policy by that much. But then the biggest gain is that we reduced the policy length by 1,142 words, what I call redundancy there. And simply put, most of that is that coverage you haven't bought isn't shown in your policy. And I'm sure we all hear this time and again in our lives in the insurance industry, people getting policies that are 60 pages, 70 pages, but actually only 20 pages of them of the policy is actually relevant to them because they didn't buy the other sections. So the most obvious and simplest gain you make by digitizing is stripping out everything that the policyholder didn't buy. So we were pleased with this. We thought this was a significant achievement. We're now going to go into a little demo of the policy. One thing I would say before we do that is that although it's a very short policy, it's actually what I would call deceptively simple in its initial form, rather than just being very straightforward and simple. It has 11 weather perils that we provide coverage for. It's got 4 potential claims verification sources that the policyholder can select. So there are an awful lot of variables within it that needed to be built into the coding of the policy because they modified the wording of the personalized policy that came out the other end. And that was what ExpertDoc helped us do. So although it does look, I hope you'll feel very, very simple and straightforward and clear, there's actually a lot under the hood that needed to go into simplifying it. So I think Jim's going to just drive it while I go through it now, and we'll take a look at the policy itself. Jim, are we on? Are we into it? I can't see it on my screen.
I can describe the screen for you, William. It has a heading that says what's included, what's excluded, claims.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know why it's not come up on my screen. That's very strange. Okay. Well, I will sort of try and walk you through it in that case. So what you've got is 4 sections to the policy. What's included, what's excluded, general claims and general terms. And this is a policy that we created as a mock, but it is running now. We've been issuing policies since the end of April. But this one was for an insurance conference in Texas in the middle of May. And the what's included section is effectively the insuring clause, if you like. And as you can see, what it says is precisely what you've bought. There are no abstractions to it at all. If you want to click on the U, Jim, pops up. And it's the dig-in organizing committee. So the U is not an abstract named insured. The event location, if you want to click on event location further down the text, is an actual place, the Austin Hilton, 500 East 4th Street, Austin. and the whole wording of the policy is fully personalized to describe exactly the coverage you've got. Now, the important thing about this was that we discovered that when you actually do this and you move away from abstractions like named insured or coverage period or sum insured, these sort of labels that you continually send you back to the deck page to remind yourself what they are, you get a much simpler, easier to understand piece of language, and that was a kind of important discovery, that once you transform it into something, the digitization is in a sense secondary. It's really the personalization which is the more important point here. It becomes that much easier to understand. So if we can just go into the what's excluded very briefly, and as you can see, that is extremely short. There were things originally in the what's excluded, and people said, well, they seem to be there for what you might call immemorial usage, but we weren't sure why they were there, and so we were able to trim that down quite materially. And then if we go into the claims section, the nice thing about this policy is it has effectively a kind of parametric trigger. If the weather does what it says in the policy, you'll be paid, and there's no need for you actually or for us to receive a formal claim from our policyholder in order for that to happen. So we teamed up with a company called Weather Decision Technologies, which is a huge provider of weather data with access to weather stations throughout the country. And essentially, in the event of following the insured event, they will send us and the client information on what the weather actually did at the event. And if it triggered your coverage, then we will automatically pay the claim. So that was an important thing that we wanted to be able to include. The policy didn't work that way previously. You actually had to lodge a formal claim. But through the partnership with Weather Decision Technologies, we were able to enhance and speed up the claim service in that way. One thing that was mentioned, I think, a little bit earlier on was the regulatory dimension. If you click, Jim, at the top, the little hamburger chart at the top there, you can see there's a reference to download PDF. And there is a PDF version of the policy provided as well to make sure that we were satisfying the regulators' expectation that you did have a policy with a declarations page, and that was all laid out. The PDF version of the policy is personalized in exactly the same way as the HTML version is. We think the HTML version is much more user-friendly because it's got the pop-up functionality on the definitions in particular. And it incorporates the deck page information rather than repeating it up at the front. But from a regulatory point of view, as things currently stand, we have included the PDF to make sure we were satisfying all the regulatory requirements. So that's where it really stands at the moment. We're looking at other policies and exploring other policies that we can do this with. We think the relevance of the technology is quite wide. It's not as if this is purely an SME challenge and problem. We've talked to a lot of risk managers who say that they are burdened by enormously complex and over lengthy policies, and they would like to see improvements there as well. We talk to brokers who say that they are concerned in certain areas about the E&O risk of not fully understanding the coverage that they've arranged for their clients and being asked to explain it and getting it wrong, and then having an exposure there. So there's a kind of, I think, a strong convergence within our industry that something needs to be done to address this and build further trust with clients. But I would stress that it isn't. It's a complicated thing to do. It's something we're absolutely committed to doing at Beazley because, as I said right at the beginning, it's our tagline, beautifully designed insurance, and we feel very passionate about it. But it's not a task to be taken lightly. So I'd be very happy to answer any questions anybody might have on this.
Well, very good, William. I must say that normally when we go through these case studies, I'll be impressed by the efficiencies that have been gained, the return on investment that the insurer client has gotten through its engagement with its vendor. I'm just knocked out by this. It's in a way so obvious, but it is so powerful. I'd actually like to get Mark's take on this because you're closer to the insurers in certain respects and what's happening in the industry. I mean, I could see this even influencing other industries. We've all seen multiple times the software user agreements. Wouldn't it be nice if there were one that were written in intelligible English rather than this stream of many pages of a gobbledygook that only makes sense to lawyers? Mark, what's your take on the kind of departure this is, and also the approach of doing both things at the same time, producing the compliant document and also producing a much more intelligible document for the layman?
Well, I think there's actually a buzz in the there's actually a buzz in the industry right now building around this, because I know when this presentation and demo was done at the Diggin event in Austin that William mentioned, there were a lot of people in that room just saying, "Wow, that is amazing." And as you pointed out, Anthony, it's at once very obvious, and you say, well, of course, why don't we do it that way? But William, as you mentioned, I mean, it's very difficult to do from a process and a technology and a
cultural standpoint. It's like changing the mass or something, right?
I wouldn't underestimate the cultural challenges at all. I think the cultural challenges are really quite significant. Somebody mentioned earlier on the idea that all this language has been sort of hallowed by the courts. But there are a lot of people in insurance companies who are, in a sense, kind of invested in the complexity and the way in which things have been historically done, and their thinking needs to evolve a little bit to kind of embrace something like this. So that is a challenge, I think.
Yeah, so we've had a spate of questions. I'm not surprised given the content. The first of these, William, is are you able to share engagement metrics, return on investment, CSAT measures, et cetera, or some part of that either now or potentially behind the scenes later?
No, I mean this is very, very new for us. This has literally just been launched. What we did, and again, I feel this is strongly this is part of a sort of sensible design thinking approach, is we built a prototype of this. We tested it with brokers. We tested it with clients. The response was extremely favorable. Obviously, our goal is to enhance the stickiness of our client relationships and improve retention. From that point of view, WeatherGuard is not an ideal policy because it tends to be relating to individual events. We do have some policyholders who buy coverage every year, but a lot just come in and buy coverage for individual events. But we also obviously hope that to increase sales over time as well. But it's really too early to say how successful it has been from that point of view. My experience of the insurance industry is that things always take a while to ramp up and really gain momentum and bring in returns. When we launched Beazley Breach Response, which is now one of the market's leading cyber insurance policies in 2009, it took a while because that was a radically different design for an insurance policy, and it took a while for people to respond to that. But we hope over time that will happen.
Great. Somebody had asked whether we could show the PDF, and I hope they've noticed that we have done that while this conversation was going on. Another question for you, William. Do you send physical policy packs to customers?
No. We send them a link. Or the broker sends them a link. All our business comes through brokers, and a lot of this business actually comes through wholesale brokers. So the wholesaler will send a link through to the retail broker, and then the link will be sent on to the client. But that's the form you get of the policy. Again, if you go into the policy and you want to print it out, you can print out the PDF. So the PDF is there. But another thing which is important, and I should have mentioned earlier, is that this is also fully mobile responsive. So we really do envisage that people will possibly most frequently be consulting it, on their mobile phones, and that's something which we were very keen to do. But obviously the best way to do that is on the HTML version rather than the PDF.
Right. Another question for you, William. It's similar to the earlier one, but I think we can find a way of asking it slightly differently. The way it's come in is understanding that WeatherGuard was the first project by Beazley. So can you quantify the effort, if you're willing to share that? And of course, we needn't hear necessarily any proprietary information, but if there's some way you can sum up the quantity of effort, the rough time that it took to get this done, those kinds of quasi-metrics.
So actually, overall, we've been on a kind of 2-year journey to get to where we are now. And what you saw today isn't the only fruits of where we are now. We've got a lot of work going on simplifying our other wordings, as well as the whole digitization initiative. But this is innovative, and you go down blind alleys and come up with things that don't work so well and so forth. So there's been that kind of a journey that we've been on. Actually putting the policy together did not take so long. But that was really because we'd spent an awfully long time last year working on the design of it and testing it with people, particularly with brokers, to see that they were, they liked the way it fitted together. I have to say, ExpertDoc did a fabulous job when we actually really engaged with them to build it, and that goes into the important dimension that I mentioned earlier about ease of use at our end, and the team under Christian Phillips, who heads our contingency team here in the US, have found it refreshingly easy to actually produce policies using this technology.
So another rather specific question that relates to some of the discussion we've had about compliance. Did you face any regulatory challenges when you adopted digital policy pack?
No.
I guess in some lines of business or in many lines of business, requirements that no longer exist?
No, I think my understanding, and I'm not a compliance professional. My understanding is there is a requirement to have a paper document. Now, a PDF satisfies that requirement, but that's not something you can. That is something which you need to maintain. But we've had no issues raised over the fact that we are producing the PDF. But we're also producing this HTML digital format. I think that there is no reason why regulators obviously should not like it, because part of the regulators' goal is to ensure that coverage is clear. And as clearly expressed as it can be, and the NAIC has a digital task force, and they've been looking at the value of digital technologies in lots of areas. So I'm hoping we're swimming with the current on that.
That's great, and I would like to think that's the case as well. We've seen regulators demonstrate a lot of willingness to move with technology, though. Obviously, there's some friction there. I guess we might note which jurisdictions WeatherGuard is available in.
It's available in 32 states at the moment, and they were simply states that we could do drawer filings for. So that's what we did. But we're expanding it beyond those states and doing the, satisfying the filing requirements of the other states as well.
All right, I think we'll ask one more question during this question and answer period before we move on to David. In trying to envision building business case for this, can you provide data on things like the importance of ease of use that you've referred to? I think you could answer that in a more intuitive way about how you balanced these considerations.
Well, as I said at the beginning, we did talk a lot to brokers about this because we really wanted to get a sense of how important it was for them and how important they thought it was for their clients. And the answer to that was that it really was very important to them. In some ways, you can look at all of this as being a sort of an unfortunately neglected kind of backwater of our business. And there is no reason why that should be the case, because the policyholders really do care. If you talk to a small business, as I say, they raise the issue about small print almost immediately when invited to say what really frustrates them about insurance. And when you talk to a risk manager, you get the same kind of thing. Now, risk managers are interesting because a risk manager is somebody who's professionally invested in the business, and he or she does not want to acknowledge that they don't understand the arcane language of insurance policies necessarily, but they still exhibit a lot of frustration at the complexity of the documentation that they have to wade through. So as I say, we got a very, very clear steer from our clients that this is something that they would value.
Well, I can't help coming back to what you said about not underestimating the cultural dimension, and I keep thinking of something like changing the liturgy of the Mass or something. It's an approach that's so hallowed in the processes of insurance companies at the deepest levels of their core competence that it's understandable why they would resist this, and yet it's such a compelling proposition, and it's just stunning to see the obvious carried out. Well, thank you so much for those answers, and thank you so much to our audience for all those great questions. Now we're going to move along to Dave Squibb.
Thanks, Anthony. So just a little introduction to ExpertDoc. We're a global company. We're focused on innovative document gen, document management, and customer communication solutions. We have offices in both North America and Europe, and we're proud to serve in excess of over 1,000 customers globally. Last year and the year prior to that, listed on Profit 500 as one of Canada's fastest growing companies. We're also a Microsoft Gold partner and an ISO solution partner. And then we've been awarded a U.S. patent for our document template migration technology. So what we do is we work with forward-thinking carriers like Beazley to apply our technology along the entire customer communication spectrum. Besides DocGen and document management solutions, carriers turn to us when they're focused on digitalization, electronic applications and onboarding, omni-channel delivery challenges, content management, and full text search across all of their digital assets. And when they're looking to migrate their existing document template investments from legacy technologies like Caligo or Extreme into ExpertDoc and modern technologies, they turn to us for our expertise and innovative technologies. Our latest innovation, SmartFlows, is a brand new technology that's revolutionizing the process by allowing business users to visually model the process of capturing data, generating and managing, and even delivering the most complex document scenarios. So let's go back to the digital policy that we've been talking about today. Partnering with Beazley has been a tremendous opportunity for ExpertDoc to partner with such a forward-thinking carrier. As Mark stated earlier, we work with many carriers that are applying document technology to document gen, and even carriers that are leveraging technology to make decisions and distribution of their documents much more efficiently. But those documents are largely unchanged. This has been the first time that a carrier has gone back to break the entire document down to understand how their customer interacts with it, and then re-architect the content to truly improve that engagement of their customer. William often says insurance is complex, and as insurers, we historically pass that complexity on to our customers. Beazley's beautifully designed insurance is changing that. So from the moment they shared that vision, we were excited to leverage our technology to allow their customers to truly interact with the policies by providing those dynamic definitions and clarity. So specifically, what did they do? Beazley utilized ExpertDoc smart forms and the intuitive design user experience to create complex mobile-friendly web forms to input the data to generate the specific policy. These mobile responsive input forms allow underwriters to input the data regarding the risk, and then on completion, they automatically generate the customized email that contains the link to their HTML digital policy and render the PDF version that William showed us. While the PDF version of that policy has a section for the policy definitions, the HTML policy was interactive, again, as we saw with hover over pop-ups. And we're excited to continue that journey with Beazley as well, to continue innovating on other insurance products and bringing new technology to support their complete vision. One thing we are now doing is prototyping the addition of a chatbot leveraging the interactive data on that digital policy. This will allow a broker or an insured to interact with that natural language questioning about the policy directly inside the policy or even from social platforms like Facebook. So here you can see we are overlaying it, and I'm typing in, am I insured if the wind blows harder than 75 mph? Now it's important to note, the bot does the calculation to know that the specified amount is higher than the policy limit, so it responds that it is covered. Also, the policy states miles per hour, but the bot knows or has identified what I meant when I typed in miles or mph. We could not be prouder to work with Beazley as they completely transformed their customer experience with beautifully designed insurance. We're looking forward to the next stage of that with them. So Anthony, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, that was great, David. I think it's a huge point that it matters not only to have an excellent vendor, but to have an excellent customer. And so I wondered, and I'd love for William to chime in if he feels fit, but I wondered how the conversation began, and when Beazley expressed to ExpertDoc what they were looking to get done, what your response was in terms of the readiness of your capabilities to take on that task.
Shall I say something about that, Dave?
Sure, go ahead. Thanks, William.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think they were able to hit the ground running. We had a prototype that we'd been working with, because as I mentioned, we'd been working on the sort of the visual design of this for some time. But ExpertDoc got to grips with that very, very quickly, and it's not something we've shown this afternoon, but they created a really nice interface for our underwriters and our underwriting teams to input the data and actually generate these policies. So that was very smooth and quick.
Yeah, I would say it was probably the most efficient and effective RFP process we've ever been a part of. They actually gave us their prototype that they had built out just in other technology, and they basically said, replicate this. And so we went in and replicated that. And it allowed us, once we moved forward in the project, so again, William's journey, as he said, was 2 years in kind of transforming and determining what BDI really was, but from the time we were actually engaged on the initiative to the time the project went live was 60 days. So from a technology and an innovation perspective, rolling this thing out was a very collaborative, very iterative process, and the two teams worked very, very closely together.
A specific question for you, David. Looking at that chat function, which you showed how it further expands, you might say, the intelligibility of the policy document. I think this question can be applied to other aspects of the insurance value chain. Is there the potential to escalate the chat to a human person? Should there not be an answer available through the natural language processing?
Certainly, within the capabilities, it's fully there. We've not gotten to the point yet with actually looking at how it will be deployed, specifically in the case of Beazley. but certainly those capabilities are fully there. This chat this bot is actually we are allowing it to understand. We're allowing to the team, whether it be Beazley or ExpertDoc, to actually educate the bot so that over time it becomes more and more used to the questions and the type of things based on a particular product line.
Now, one of our attendees has done something innovative in turning our question box into a question and commentary box, saying that what you've done is very impressive end-to-end, and asks the question, for the chatbot to confirm, the customer can use that, and it will be available as long as the policy is in force, and he goes on to observe that it's very interesting. So, David, could you address that, or maybe William as well?
Well, I mean, just to be very clear, we haven't got a chatbot on WeatherGuard. It's very hard to see how WeatherGuard per se would need a chatbot because it is so simple in the first place. You don't need to ask it questions. But as you get to more complex policies or policies with many parts to them, that's where I think potentially a chatbot could come into its own.
And another question, I'm not sure this is quite the right question, but it's one we received. Have you implemented Digitize Policy Pack for any life insurance company? That's for you, David.
To date, nothing. Beazley is the only one that has gone this far. Again, obviously, digitizing the policy is a relatively new concept, but the technology is there and fully accessible. So to us, it's a document.
There's nothing preventing your doing so.
Absolutely not. Again, we're in discussions with life carriers now. We do a lot of work with health insurers, health providers, as well as we're even talking about doing similar types of functionality around claims and the claims experience.
All right. Well, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. One of the questions I had here was to the topic that Mark introduced earlier on about other applications of this kind of technology to different parts of the insurance value chain or different touch points for customers.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as specifically around the digitalization, Anthony, that was for you.
No, what I mean is, yes, I mean the kinds of things that you've done here, right? What I'm talking about is language and whether there are other opportunities within the insurance value chain or customer touch points where you can apply similar principles and similar technology to make the communications more intelligible while remaining compliant.
Sure. Yeah, we see it starting all the way up from the application process. So the application and quoting side of things, which again can be challenging. We see a lot of interest on the health carrier side around onboarding and benefit enrollment because a lot of times those are largely confusing processes. So we see the same type of benefit there, and we see carriers moving in that direction. We see it on the claim side, obviously, because, again, another challenging part of what is and is not covered, what am I entitled to. So we see that there's a lot there. And then, again, I think even in discussions with companies like Beazley, we're talking about the quoting side as well. So.
All right, I'm going to squeeze in one last question with the remaining time for you, David. Did ExpertDoc do the actual coding, and does the system live on-premises, or in the cloud?
Great question. We worked collaboratively. Yes, we did a lot of the work in collaboration with the Beazley team, so it was a joint team rolling that out. It is currently hosted in the cloud. So all of the ExpertDoc portion of that is in the cloud.
Very good.
But we do offer it on-prem as well.
Very, very good. Well, this has been a really great discussion on a very exciting topic. I'm afraid that's all the time we have today, so that concludes our event. And the attendees, thank you again for joining us. You'll receive a recording link for today's webcast during the next few days, and you'll be able to access it on demand during the coming year. Thank you for attending today's webcast, Personalized Policy, How Smart Digital Documents Are Revolutionizing Insurance Communications, broadcast by Insurance Innovation Reporter and sponsored by ExpertDoc. This event is copyright 2018 by Pembury Strategic Services, LLC. The presentations are the intellectual property of the presenters, who are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our speakers, Mark Brading of SMA, William Pitt of Beazley, and David Squibb of Expertdoc, we'd like to once again thank all of our attendees for their time today. This is Anthony O'Donnell of Insurance Innovation Reporter, wishing you a great day.